Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Presents Sticks and Stones. My name is Sean.
And I'm John Rambo.
And I'm Missy.
And I'm Ray.
And we're going to talk about a movie tonight. This would be something I would consider modern folk horror, although, as Missy pointed out, you can question whether it's a horror movie or not, but whatever. I'm going to go with it. I think there's enough elements. This is 2020's The Droving. This is written by George Popov and Jonathan Russell and directed by George Popov. Uh, I'm not familiar with George Popov other than this movie, which I first saw in 2020. This is on Prime included with it, so if you're a Prime member, you can watch it. I absolutely love this movie. So I watched it in 2020 during COVID, really liked it. I think I got Ray to watch it, and I put on a little list I had with movies like Without Name. This is kind of before like folk horror had its resurgence, and I was keeping track of these movies, these modern movies like this, calling them like quiet British occult movies or some I had some weird like genre name in my head for them. And I just rewatched it the other night for this, and I'm like, holy shit, it's even better than I thought that it was. So, stars Daniel Oldroyd as Martin, Suzanne Dalloway as Tess, Amy Tiger as Megan, John Love as Husky, Bobby Robertson as Simon, and this guy, Jonathan Lawrence Risden as the Hermit. Great performance, among others. Let's talk about The Droving. This will be a full spoiler discussion for those that haven't seen the movie. However, I would say if you're into folk horror, or especially like Missy's not really into folk horror, right? And you like this movie, what was your take on this movie? Like, how did
Okay.
you explained it to me? You're like, I don't see the folk horror. I see it as yada yada yada.
Okay. Well, like I know you and I have talked about it many times. I don't tend to connect with the folk horror stuff most of the time. I mean, I'm open to trying stuff, but 9 times out of 10, I just find them boring and I get lost or they put me to sleep. But you picked this and you thought I'd like it, so I figured I'd give it a try. That's why I don't usually do these with you because
Yeah.
they're just not my thing. Um, but I mean, and I put it on a day where I'm like, I'm just gonna kind of feel it out, and if it doesn't click with me, I'll come back to it tomorrow or something. But I put it on and it sucked me in. And to me, it just felt like a good like indie murder mystery. And I love murder mysteries and stuff like that. And it sucked me in immediately. It's very like I think it's a really solid film. Um there's elements of the folk horror stuff. But what I had asked you was not that I don't think it's a horror movie. My question was what defines folk horror? Because to me, this felt like a murder mystery with did they talk about the festival and you see these animal masks, but it's like it's there, but it's not. If you like murder mysteries, but you don't like folk horror, you might still like this because it's very character driven. I really liked the leading guy, played by Daniel Oldroy. His character was Martin. He's a brother looking for his lost sister, but he's very well developed. His character is very solid, and I had no problem riding along with him. But it kind of takes you on this journey, and it feels like like an investigation. Like you go through the whole investigation with this guy. Um, I mean, I thought the cinematography is outstanding. It
Yeah.
it uses tension well. It's got a haunting tone, and I mean, I don't love it like you do, but I dug it, and I'd watch it again. And if you like indie murder mysteries, I'd have no problem with recommending it to someone.
Cinematographer Harry Young also worked with Popov on the previous movie, The Hex, which I have to uh, track down because I'm curious about. John, so we've defined folk horror before,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, what did you think of the film, and do you think that it ties into the basic tenets of folk horror? Do you want to like go over, there's obviously like the element of British folklore tying into pre-Christian beliefs or sacraments or whatnot, but I don't know, talk a little bit about the movie and whether it is or whether it's not in your opinion. And
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, yeah, of course it is. I would definitely say so. I mean, it just it may not resemble uh certain things that spring into our mind when we hear the word folk horror, but that's okay because it still is, I mean,
hmm
and it only takes just a minute or two to think it through. This is my first time seeing this film. Um, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I thought it was really good. I'm really interested in seeing The Hex now because that's a film I had heard of, but
okay.
didn't get a chance to see it. Um, and the thing that I find really interesting about this film is that you know, Missy talked about the cinematography, and I think that's very true. But what I think is interesting about the cinematography is just sort of how much he's able to do using so little. I mean, clearly this isn't a big budget film, and the way he's able just to take natural landscape and just without any bells and whistles, just bend it to his will through the camera lens, to create something just completely menacing. And yeah, I mean, because we've talked about uh, the difference between folk horror and gothic horror, um, and as being, just sort of like rooted in very different things. And this is a place, and I've been to the Lake District before, and I have not seen a droving ritual before
hmm
that's depicted in the film, which in a way that very much kind of brings to mind the Wicker Man. I've read a couple things about this film, and they all mention Wicker Man, Wicker Man,
Yeah.
Wicker Man. Really, I think anyone that may be true for George Popov, but I look at this and just sort of think, anyone who's ever been to a Ballantine festival in Scotland or in Northern England, um, will just totally be left with images that you just see in this film. I mean, people are just carrying torches and like dancing in the torches. People get naked and like jump through the flames. It's like it's essentially it's just sort of. I mean, it's apart from being kind of an excuse for people in the modern era to uh, pretend that they're pagans and just totally run wild with that.
hmm
It's it really is kind of a cultural heritage that is goes beyond just sort of like this royal family pageantry, and that's really where the like it works for me as a folk horror film, and what makes it a folk horror film because it's like clearly acknowledging stuff that is still going on to this very day that just ends up being kind of cosplay for people. And
hmm
I think Popoff is just sort of as a thought experiment is like, okay, well, what if this really got taken too far?
I like that. Ray, talk a little bit about the movie and folk horror in general.
Sure. Well, I liked Missy's question. I think it's an interesting question. Um, and I think part of the answer, just to add to the elements that John has already talked about, one thing, because I guess this is my second viewing. One thing I would say is that this went faster, the second viewing. I
It
think because
did.
I knew where it was going, and because of that, I think this time I was carefully watching for things that maybe I missed the first time. And I think part of the answer is that the festival is part of it, and um, right away there is the sense that people know more than they're letting on to with him, and that there is a he is the outsider. They're the insiders, and they're not supposed to share that with him. And so there is the guy in the hut. There is the hermit in the hut. There is the woman that he goes and talks to find out what happened, like the friend of his sister's and what happened to her. And the guys wrestling in the field. Like there's an insidiousness of like they know something that they're not supposed to share with him. And I think that's part of it. Like you get I mean, that's the big part of the Wicker Man is that these people have this cultural practice, and he is an outsider, and he's not going to get it, and he's not supposed to necessarily be shared that knowledge. So that's part of it. Um, I think a big part of it is the ending, and either buying into or questioning, like, okay, is this just some dude who like comes along and fucks with people's heads, or is he something supernatural? Is he possibly the devil? I mean, it's hard to say. The first time I watched it, I felt fairly convinced that he was the devil. But then as I was watching the film and the second time, I'm sitting there going, I don't know. I don't know. And that that hang up, I think is part of it. Like maybe the guy who he was even chasing, the guy who s- seemingly murdered the sister or did something to her to try and earn the souls that he needed to regain his dead wife. Maybe even he didn't know. Like, the film feels somewhat inconclusive in who that guy is, but the hermit tells that story, and he seemingly seems to know more about it than he has to be pushed to get let
Hmm.
out. So I think that's part of it, and is that there's this shared folk tradition, and the people of the area understand that tradition, know that tradition, and he's this outsider, and he's trying to just answer this mystery, and because of that, it makes it something that he has to work past. Um, and it could be just that it's a red herring, but I think it's also that they feel not just I think they fear like what could come of them if they share that knowledge with him. Um, I think that's a big part of that like why it makes it folk horror, because they have that shared tradition, that shared knowledge, and he's this outsider that doesn't have that knowledge. So
Yeah, and so I think that's perfectly said. This movie is interesting insofar as like the way I view it as folk horror. It has kind of the adornments, but so there's the setup where okay, Martin is basically a military interrogator, right, or torturer. He implies coming back from the Middle East, uh, and his sister a year ago disappeared during this droving festival. And in this rural area of Britain, this is like John said, was the Lake District. So this was shot around Penrith. It's filmed in Cumbria, and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful country, but rural. And so a lot of these areas still have an identity of celebrating, their pre-Christian folk traditions. And so they have things like this, right? And the droving is simply like the meaning of droving is the practice or ritual of moving a large number of animals. And so it basically, this is kind of like a seasonal thing. They're going to bring the animals in for slaughter at the end of the season or whatever, and they make this festival, and it brings in people, it brings in outsiders. So there's that element where it seems to run contrary to folk horror, where technically the town or the area is fine with sharing. It's like, yeah, this is our tradition, come and experience it. So they have people dressed up in animal masks, and they all walk through the town, and it's all very pagan, although pretty the main part of it's pretty tame, and then there's little offshoots, like John said, where people kind of act differently, and you run into that where they're talking about the lads, like this group that the sister's friend advises Martin he doesn't want to mess with because they use this festival as an excuse to do violent or bad things or whatever. But so that would seem to run in the opposite direction of like, oh, you can't know, like, oh no, come and share. But the thing is, where you get into the folk horror, there are these people like the hermit, and at first, like the lads maybe, that believe in something more than just once a year putting on a costume, getting drunk, and running around town. And there's a sinister, a foreboding there. And that's what Martin is cutting to the heart of. So the festival is just kind of part of the setting, and it ends up being in the climax of the film, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the folk horror other than that, like as an adornment. The folk horror is this him cutting in to the heart of what's actually going on, and you get into these people, and it's like, do they believe? So the hermit like 100% believes, and he hates the festival because he just thinks it's people, despoiling like these rituals for the sake of just being, getting drunk and acting like idiots or whatever. And they've lost the real meaning of it. And I just, man, I think it makes for a wonderful backdrop for a missing person. And, right away, a missing person movie it's already sinister. And
Right.
especially when you're in a setting like this where it's like, where like you lose somebody in rural England, I mean, that's fucked, right? Uh, and it is, John, they do, like you said, like this movie did not cost a lot of money and they really stretch. And now part of it is just the eye candy of being able to film this area because it's immediate production value, right? You do a couple wide shots of this and you're automatically just strengthening your film. But Popov really uses it, and it's such a, I don't know, there's just such a great tone, like a great atmosphere to this movie. Martin, Oldroyd is amazing as Martin. Like, he has this intensity. And there's that scene where he's interrogating the hermit. And I love that scene. I remembered it from the first time I watched it because he's speaking to him very, he comes in whenever he's going to like kind of get information. He comes in like he's just like, oh yeah, I'm a fish out of water. I don't know. And then quickly kind of zeroes in. And in that conversation with the hermit, he speaks and then will raise his voice so dramatically in these very quick staccato, like, no, and it's very startling, and you can tell the person on the receiving end of it's completely put them off guard. And I really really like the way he does that. And also, like, he himself, like, there's a scene where he threatens somebody's children and it's fucked up. I mean, it's like he will go, whether or not he would actually go to those lengths, the fact that he would say the things that he says in that moment, it's like tells you he's going to get what he wants, or like he's going to burn the fucking world down. And he just wants to know what happened to his sister. And if something bad happened, he wants the person or people responsible to pay, right? There's one scene. What did you guys think of? So there's a fight scene. And the first time I saw the movie, I felt like the fight scene was like a little bit like, oh man, they didn't like really choreograph this very well. And then when I watch it this time, I'm like, dude, this is like pretty fucking realistic fight scene because it looks like somebody just filmed a fucking fight where you wouldn't necessarily get like all the glitz and like the perfect choreography. It's very like rudimentary. I feel like it's extremely effective. John, what do you think? How do you think they did with that fight scene?
God, very carefully, and I'm more than certain somebody got a shiner from that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, oh, a couple of those
They,
might have been actual.
Right.
they did, and they just say the same thing that like happens on every set. Pain is temporary, film is forever. And then they walk off set and they're like, fucking prick.
Any other thoughts on the fight scene? I don't want to belabor the point. I was just very curious. Ray, what do you think about the fisticuffs?
Well, the first time I saw it, because it's like the poster, like those masks and everything. So I thought,
Yeah,
oh,
that dog mask is just fucking phenomenal,
that's
man.
creepy.
Yes.
It is. It is a creepy ass mask.
The
But I was like,
masks are
oh,
cool.
now we're gonna get to something, and then it leads to a red herring, and I was like, oh, that's clever. Like, but then again, like the second time watching it, like I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, is it though? Is it were they possibly dispatched purposely to try and scare him off, and then it doesn't work out?
Oh, that's
Uh,
interesting.
like it makes it like the second time it made me wonder because there's that whole scene where he has like it, I mean, is it a different group of guys or is it the same guys who were like
No, it's
wrestling
the
in the
same
field?
guys. It's the same guys. It's the lads. He basically
Okay,
they think he's a moron, right? They don't
yeah.
realize who they're talking to, so they're like, oh well, we're gonna get this motherfucker.
Right. Then they find out he can really fight because he was a military man.
Does he lose the match in the field on purpose
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He
so that he
totally
can?
plays.
He's
He
baiting them.
yeah, he's like the guy that goes into the pool hall and is like, oh god, I
So
don't
then
know
he
how to play.
does
Is
want
you
them to
know.
show up again. So he does want it. He does want them to show up again,
Yeah.
underestimating him, so that he can get the upper hand and get some
Yeah, he tells him I'm
information.
going to
Hmm.
sleep in my car, and then he sleeps in his car
It's
simply
true.
because he's
Right.
waiting for them to attack him.
But do you feel like do you feel like they're still hiding, they're still holding back the information after he wins the fight, or
No, I
are they
don't think they
not?
actually know
No.
anything. I like your
Hmm.
idea that maybe they were dispatched by somebody that was like, but I don't think so. Simply because I think everything that guy says in at the end of the fight is like, dude, we just do this because we like to bully people and get respect that
Hmm.
way. Like we don't know anything about the old ways. We don't give a shit. But it's that
Yeah.
that's the guy that leads him to the hermit, right? So it's
To the
all
hermit.
these like movie reminds me so much in some ways of Kill List. It would be a perfect fucking double feature with Kill List.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh, that military folk horror kind of juxtaposition, but yeah, I mean he's getting deeper into this because then he goes to the hermit, and the hermit's not really a guy, but he's heard of the merchant, and the merchant's interesting because there is like I looked that up. That other than the Canterbury tales, which this is obviously not that merchant, right? Um, this is just a construct of the movie, I think, unless they've like redressed or renamed something, But I couldn't find anything else because I was wondering, like with pre-Judeo-Christian folk traditions of England, Albion. Um, there's not like there's other
There's
entities
other
beyond like
stories.
the devil, right? There's a
Yeah.
wider pantheon. So I'm like, what is this based on this merchant character who trades souls based on something? And you could make an analog to the devil, uh, but I
See,
get the sense it was something deeper.
I just took him as like a crossroads demon,
Yeah, yeah.
like just making deals.
I mean that British countryside is just steeped in ideas of and that's like kind of the folk horror thing. It's almost like the the people of those times invented deities and entities and worshipped or respected or communicated with them. And the idea of folk horror is like, yeah, the world moved on and left that shit behind, but it's still there.
I think the thing I think I said the devil, but I think the thing to think about is that especially in relation to folk horror, like the devil as a construct, as an idea, even in Judeo-Christian theology, is somewhat dictated by popular culture as much as it is by like what's actually there in the text. And um, I mean, there's a vague concept of the adversary or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him
Hmm.
in the Bible. And then you get things that come along like Paradise Lost, and
Exactly.
and the concept gets a lot more fleshed out. But um, it's a weird thing to cite this movie, but like, there's a line in I'm totally blanking on the exact line, but there's a line in The Devil's Advocate where Pacino's character, who's supposed to be the
It's the
devil,
line, ooh, ah.
no, no, he says something to the effect of like, you know, something about how his character like the idea of who he is was fleshed out for people by a drunk Irish poet.
Yeah,
And
right, right.
I mean, like if you go back and look at like, I mean, the whole concept of the devil being there at creation and tempting Adam and Eve, that's not there in the Bible. Like if you go back and actually read those texts, which I did as a student at one point in an English course, um, that's not mentioned. Like the serpent that's there in the story gets punished, just like Adam and Eve. He gets his legs taken away, and he's made into the snake that has to crawl and slither around his body on the
Yeah.
earth, and thereby getting his punishment. So it's not implied that he's the devil. That's a construct of the poem of Paradise Law. I mean, not Paradise Lost. Yeah, Paradise Lost. And like a lot of like what we perceive as this is the devil, this is what the devil does, is borrowed from other like from popular fiction, but also like Christianity has been like constructed, and the belief structures have been constructed from adapting see religions that were there, paganism and other things. Like, oh, well, we'll just adapt this into Christianity, and we'll make it part of Christianity, like, you know, Easter and things like that. Like
Yeah.
they basically were trying to win people over, and
Yeah.
they went, oh, you know, yeah, we have a we the yeah, I know what the collector is. That's the devil. I know what you're talking about. Come on into our church. We'll talk
Yeah.
about it. So part of it could have been like that's maybe that's an old construct or an old idea of the devil, but it's morphed into Christianity. Um, it could have been something else. It can be this collector, but just this concept of he's going to reward you by giving him souls is, uh, and of course he's lying because,
Well, we don't know that he's lying. We don't.
well,
I
I
mean,
think
there's no proof that this is the actual devil. This could be some other entity,
this
right?
could
Like
be
it
someone
could
else.
line up,
But
but
the reason I have belief that he's lying is that he watches the person who he had roped into this scheme of like bring me souls get murdered by someone else, and then the first thing he does is come up to the guy who's murdered
yeah.
somebody and be like, I know you did those other things because of what you were doing, because of service, but this is different. But what if I told you I can give you your sister back? Like he's got someone else roped into the plan. So it's like a
He's always making deals. He's always moving. He's the
yeah,
merchant.
it's a demonic pyramid scheme.
Yeah, basically. I don't know, John, do you think Ray's crazy?
Well, yeah, but I don't think he's wrong about this. I think that's really what is part of like folk horror just kind of goes into, like what really like I mean, non-folk horror looks into what makes us tick, on the inside, and this just sort of like kind of what differentiates, like primitive society from modern one. And I think it's to this film's credit that it just sort of kind of like leaves us somewhat hanging on, like what, with what hand, is being played, as part of this, and like is this like and no one's searching for paradise here. This isn't
Nope.
like a Paradise Lost. This is, just sort of like people just sort of accepting accepting kind of bleakness and celebrating it.
Yeah. Missy?
Supernatural is my favorite show, and there are lots of crossroad. There's tons of things with the crossroads demons and making deals to bring people back, and that's what the merchant felt like to me.
Okay.
Like that's just I didn't think he was the devil or he he's a crossroads demons. They collect souls and they make these deals. Sometimes they even come true on them for a little while, but it always goes sour because you're dealing with demons. But I mean, I like that it's left vague, and I mean, and I liked that. Like, I like the idea of folk horror. I don't know. I guess I haven't seen the right movies. The ones I've seen always seem to be boring.
You got to see Kill
But
List. That we have to do
I'll
that one.
check it out.
That's an outstanding modern take on this for sure. As is this.
On the way you guys were like defining folk horror, would Children of the Corn be folk horror?
Yeah.
Mm.
In,
Mm.
in fact, in fact, Ray and I covered Children of the Corn on the second episode of this.
Okay. See, I never thought of it that way. And so, like, I think about folk horror and I think of things like The Witch, which is not for me.
Hmm.
But I love Children of the Corn, and I like the imagery and think I think I'm okay with it in more modern versions, like modern folk horror where they're taking elements, but it doesn't feel so slow.
Right.
I like this. This didn't feel slow. I mean, it's like a 90-minute movie and it felt snappy.
Less than that even. It whizzed right along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't feel draggy at all. And I liked how small and intimate it was, but it didn't have that overbearing feeling that I think of with some of the folk horror stuff.
Right. This is definitely not overly ambitious, and one of the best parts, I feel like one of the reasons why this movie moves so quickly, and it's like a moment where I'm like, oh God, yes. The scene where he goes back to talk to Tess, and he's like, "You didn't tell me something before," and he's asking, "What is it? Adam is the guy that he's looking for?"
Simon,
Um, and he's like, "Where is he?" And she's like, "He's in my living room." Like, I just feel like that is such a fucking awesome. It's not a device, but just like I love the beats in that. Like instead of having to go somewhere else, like he literally knocks on the door, she comes outside, and he's talking to her, and then it's like, no, he's in my house. Look, what a triumph of just like moving things along in the best possible way. I absolutely love that. Uh, I mean, definitely not the guy that you're expecting to be like the the bad guy. He doesn't really like visually fit that bill, but that almost makes it even creepier. And this movie's got a creep factor, even aside from the masks and stuff. There's just I feel like it's a very well executed film, and it's George Popov definitely knew, like, I have this much money. I'm going to tell a story that is 100% within the realms of what I can use. Like, he just hits it out of the park because he knows not to overshoot his means, and it just really works for him.
Did you do anything after this?
He's got a couple. I had in looking him up again, I must have seen this before and forgot about it. He's got this series of movies, and I'm not sure if they're documentaries. Uh, Side World. So there's Side World, Haunted Forests of England, Side World, Terrors of the Sea, and Side World, Damnation Village. And Haunted Forests of England sounds like a documentary. Director George Popov presents a journey through three of England's most haunted forests, exploring a trove of frightening tales, myths, and folklore. And he uses a lot of the same people. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious about these, but yeah, that's it. And I don't see anything on upcoming projects. But he's definitely somebody I would like to watch
Hmm.
and see what else he does. What else? Anybody have any questions or theories or anything about this film?
Well, I would like to add that, like, I think John hits it on the head, the nail on the head with the where it ends. Like, I love that indecisiveness of it. I love that we just get that, and then the movie's over. Like, it ends really abruptly. Like,
In fact,
I
on Prime, it actually shuttles. You know how they do that thing where it automatically shrinks the credits and goes, "Oh, next play this."
yes,
Yeah,
It actually
I got the
did
same.
that before the movie was over, and I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah,
ho, ho!"
it did it to me too.
So if you watch this, folks, if you're listening, be very wary of that because you will miss the end of the movie. Sorry, Ray. I just wanted to point that out. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I wanted to warn people because I was like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, fucking, I hate that shit. Let me watch the credits and the end of the movie in peace.
I
Anyway,
know
sorry.
exactly. No, but I mean, but the way it just ends abruptly, like, and then you just get that black screen, then you hear the dialogue, like, that's that's pretty awesome. Like, it
Yeah.
just, it tells its story and then it gets out. And, like, there's too many things that languish or, like, go like, oh, I'm just gonna explain a little bit more. And, like, when you get a movie that goes, hey, this is a story I'm here to tell. And, like, once that story's over, the movie's over.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that's pretty that's good to know. Like, and I love the fact that they pull that off. Like, they do it well.
Anything else? Any final thoughts? I, I think it's a pretty succinct film, and I think that warrants a pretty succinct episode. So I would just say, again, include it on Prime, but watch that shit at the end because it will shuttle you right past the ending. That pissed me off. I'd like to get a hard copy of this eventually, but would definitely go well with Kill List or Without Name. Um, I did see The Wicker Man mentioned a lot, and I think that's just because that's like the Kleenex of folk horror. Nothing
Mm.
against The Wicker Man by any means, but I mean, it's just that when you say folk horror to somebody that doesn't know anything about horror, well, they probably will look at you like what, but the outer reaches of that, are The Wicker Man is kind of the touchstone. I don't know that that would play well with this. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, so that's The Droving by George Popov, and it's on Prime. And this is the Horror Vision, Sticks and Stones, and I'm Sean.
I'm John Milton.
I'm Mitzi.
And I'm Ray.
Hapless teenagers beset by demons in the woods. A strange new drug that turns art into murder. A can't beat a deal on a new house with a horrifying past. A video game that might usher in the apocalypse. From the demented mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires, Shadow Play, and Murder Virus, comes Volume 4, collecting Baker's no sleep work along with several never-before-published short stories. This 99-cent volume also includes the opening chapter of the author's forthcoming teenage giallo novel, Black Gloves and Broken Hearts. due out later this year.